Welcome everybody. It might take a little while, so just give it a few seconds to see if anyone actually joins in. If anyone happens to be there, please leave a 1. But I guess the video is going to stay here for a while anyway, so we'll just get straight into it. So if you guys at home, I've got a special guest with a unique set of skills. He's trained. He's a trained lawyer, and he also used to work for a large media organization. So he's perfectly positioned to discuss this article and the consequences, and it's going to be a rational, very rational from his point of view. But anyway, welcome.
Hi, Dave.
Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for asking me to join the conversation.
Yeah, I think you will have some answers that hundreds, if not thousands, of men out there they want to know. So maybe just get straight into it. What do you know so far, so that they can catch up to where you're at? Because a lot of the people watching this would already have read all the articles and seen all the videos.
Well, yeah, I don't want to come to this actually as an expert at all, Dave, because I know, I mean, you alerted me to this particular story, so I know very little about the situation apart from having read this article in Newsweek. Obviously, I've also seen the reports online that this particular guy committed suicide after this article. So I guess I'll leave it to you to do the intros and the details. I'll contribute in whatever way I can. I don't know if your listeners are already up to speed with all this, your viewers, etc.
I'd say most people only have access to what's online. You did ask me whether it was a suicide. We don't fully know. We can't confirm that, but people have claimed that it is. People who claim to know him and his family. So we're just going to assume that it is.
Okay, well, we can proceed on that assumption for this discussion, I suppose.
But it's good that we say that we just don't know.
Yep.
My understanding is this article here was published, and only a matter of days later, Tom Torero died. We believe that it was suicide. So that's where we're at the moment.
Yep.
So have you? I sent you this article. Did you get a chance to read it? And what you thought of it?
Look, the Newsweek article. It's. I have to say, it's pretty amazing what's happened to Newsweek. I mean, Newsweek used to be a prestige publication, international affairs, alongside Time magazine, and it's hard to believe what's become of it. Anyway, look, the article is it's poorly written. It's it's overly long, but I don't want to dwell on the writing style because we've got much more serious critiques of it. I think the bottom line is it's once it becomes clear that the person she's writing about hasn't broken the law, we're kind of just left with an expression of the author's opinion, really. So it's to quote the teacher in South Park, it's basically a journalist, a feminist campaigning journalist saying this is bad. Okay, that's basically, as far as I can see, what it's all about. The article is full of statements which are, I guess, inviting the reader to sort of find what she's describing as bad by implication without any critical analysis. So, I mean, it's just taken for granted that like the use of the language like target women, right? What does that mean? Initiating a conversation. It's never broken down. So, of course, targeting women, that sounds bad, right? So it's just that kind of hit piece article. So, it's not a it's sort of, it is a hit piece, like in the sense of they've obviously decided that they're going to go after this guy, and it's an opinionated piece in that respect, and that's like not always bad. you can hold account powerful people who are predators. Media has done that very well sometimes. You can also, one level down, I'm not sort of being particularly original here. Lots of people have written about how, the media can do a campaigning piece in a good way and in a bad way. You can shame people, you can punish people for having the wrong opinions. You can pressure organizations into firing or canceling people's businesses, and you couldn't, or getting into the more extreme side, you can spread fraudulent claims, and you can incite people to act against a person. So some of these things are bad, but it's possible for a campaigning journalist to do good if the journalism is fair, and if there's an attempt to analyze an issue and go to different opinions and seek critical views from both sides and all that kind of thing. Clearly, this piece is not fair. I guess it is a separate issue whether, there's a whole bunch of things that I would think, okay, such and such has been described, that he's done something that I think I'm supposed to think is bad, but I personally don't necessarily think is bad. Like convincing a young girl, manipulating was the word used, manipulating a young girl into going home with him, or whatever the term was. Look, what does that mean? There's no attempt to really critically analyze. How is manipulating a girl any different from everyday dating, hookup, how do relationships get formed? By both parties kind of manipulating each other, flirting. There's no real critical analysis of the issue. But anyway, I'm going on and on a bit. I don't really know the extent. No one, I suppose, really knows the extent to which, when a hit piece like this comes out, what effect it can have, and I don't want to speculate. I don't know, Dave. What do you reckon?
Well, you see, she's hinting here that he's sold sex recordings. It seems like there's hinting some sort of illegal activity when there's no evidence of illegal activity being done here. And he has lost a lot of his digital assets just because of this hit piece. So when I look at that, it's not just the suicide, it's the digital assets that are so valuable as well. This is in my opinion, it's not only manslaughter, but it's a civil case. This is just my opinion. Sure, there's opinion you can make. You can have an op-ed or opinion-based article and write it about someone. But when there's such devastation afterwards, since his death, there hasn't been this article's still up. Then there's no apology. There's no nothing. It's just okay. The guy's dead. What if this is part of the plan? You can just attack someone, and then if they commit suicide, then you've effectively done what. If that's their plan to actually kill people, what if it is? Well, this is just an assumption. Nobody knows, but if there's no apology, there's no admission of guilt, there's no remorse shown, then what's to stop them doing it again? So what happens if next week she writes another article on someone else and that person dies? Then it's like kind of using the media as a bit of a hitman.
Look, I guess I don't see that. Even writing a nasty hit piece like this, from a campaigning journalist, I don't necessarily see that that there's that level of what you might think of as reasonable foreseeability. I mean, I'm not being a lawyer here. I'm just being a common sense person.
So
is it reasonably foreseeable that this will happen as a result of an article that like this? I don't know that's fair. I mean, I know
No, it's not fair. It's not fair. You're right there. It's not fair to say that, okay, I'm going to write an article and that person's going to commit suicide. I'm going to get him. But it is fair to say that taking down someone's social media, their website, their payment systems, and destroying their ability to make money, that is a plan. That is something that has been done over and over and over again. And I don't think the modern laws have caught up to that. But you worked for a media organization. I'm sure you were surrounded by people like DANYA. Were you?
Yes, probably I was. Yep.
How did they feel about this type of stuff? Did they see the people that they were writing articles as human beings with livelihoods and aspirations, or they just see them as evil people who deserve what they got?
I guess it depends on the person you're talking about. I guess here's the problem, isn't it? You've got companies who are so afraid, like I'm talking about tech companies, payment platforms, social media platforms, whether it's who, or just companies that people who have online businesses rely on to process money, process credit card payments. All these companies who are so terrified of just being, someone criticizing them online, that they're willing to, at the slightest suggestion from a journalist who rings them up that X has done something wrong, they're willing to just cancel accounts and drop people. And especially when, this is an issue that's been discussed a lot, like when you've got essentially monopoly platforms that are, essentially your, if you lose access to them, like Facebook and like YouTube, if you lose access to them, then your business is finished. That's a real problem. Now, I don't know that you can sheet home the blame entirely to the journalists. Surely there has to be some criticism directed at the sort of weak and pathetic and fearful response of companies who seem to be unable to just stand up and say, hang on a second, just because someone rings us up and says, hey, what do you think about this guy? Don't you think he's doing a bad thing and he's going against your terms and conditions? Well, maybe he is going against their terms and conditions. It's possible, but it's also there are many examples of them, of YouTube just algorithmically taking people down. That's bad when these private companies are essentially the in charge of the public square. It's as though Westfield is in charge of every footpath or every public road, and they've got if some security guard doesn't like the look of you, they can sort of cart you off to prison. That's essentially like the result of monopoly social media.
And that's where you come in, because it feels like it hasn't caught up to where we are today. Think about it this way: you have a brick and mortar store, you have a cafe, you have a factory, and we have COVID, and they decide to shut down your brick and mortar store, but you've also got a digital store. During COVID, that's all you've got. It's just as valuable, if not more valuable, than a brick and mortar store that you pay rent for. I'm sure he probably paid for ads on these platforms. I'm sure he paid for hosting and the domain and all these other things that were removed. The payment platforms, he was paying a fee to use those platforms.
Yeah,
he was paying for the service, and the modern law hasn't caught up to how valuable a digital store is compared to a brick and mortar store. It's, in my opinion, the exact same thing. So
Yeah,
if you
well,
take
in that case, we need to regulate these social media and associated businesses. We need to regulate them like we regulate utilities, where everyone has a right to access them, and we don't tell people how they can and can't use them. Just like everyone has a right under legislation to have a telephone. I mean, this is really not
Yeah,
relevant in
I've
today's
heard
world
this
anymore.
argument, but I haven't heard the argument that if someone was to trigger one of these social media companies to take down your social media, that person should be liable for a civil suit. So, for instance,
Well, when you say trigger, I don't necessarily agree with that. Just someone, a journalist, ringing up and saying, "What do you think?" or emailing the PR department or the media department of YouTube or PayPal or whatever, and saying, "Have you seen this guy's account? I think he might be breaching your terms of service." Like, just asking that question, that's journalism. I don't know that there's any trigger there.
Not exactly. That's not exactly how it plays out. How it plays out is, what do you feel about this being on your platform? By the
Yeah,
way, I'm from Newsweek, and I'm about to write an article.
correct. Yes,
And
exactly.
and there's there's the hidden threat that if you do not take them off the platform, I'm going to talk about you in a bad light as well.
Correct.
And so the person that gets squeezed here is the innocent person that owns whatever social media that is. And I'm sure the journalist, I'm sure DANYA was aware that was what she was doing, which in my opinion has to be some sort of she's aware of what she's coercing them with the threat of the abuse of the media.
Well, I mean, these companies, she didn't make up those social media companies' terms of service. I mean, she doesn't create the policies and the way they enforce them.
Did he break some sort of terms and services, do you think? I don't know.
Well, these terms of service are written, and I think she did in the article quote some of them, or at least refer to some of them, and they generally are broad enough to allow this kind of thing to be taken down, because it says something like sexually explicit, or basically it gives them the wiggle room. It basically says anything that's antisocial. Like they use this sort of broad enough terms to allow them precisely to do this. So
what he was doing on those platforms was nowhere near as bad as people like some of the biggest influencers in the world. The biggest influencer in Australia, Jackson O'Doherty, literally almost being naked on camera, having like sex parties and things like that, and having girls doing sexual acts on camera all the time. These people aren't being deplatformed. I don't think any of these guys like Tom TORERO were doing anything as explicit as these people. Jackson O'Doherty did lose his Instagram with, I don't know, I think it was like 3 or 4 million followers at one stage while he was promoting his OnlyFans. But he actually admitted on camera when he went on the Logan Paul Impulsive podcast that he was literally uploading porn to his Instagram, literally just uploading porn. Now, someone like Tom TORERO was, if this is, it wasn't even going anywhere near that.
Yeah, well, you make a good point. That's
the threshold. Then we should have the ability to take down everybody that goes over the threshold that Tom TORERO apparently breached. And if they arbitrarily attacked him for whatever that threshold is, they admit there has to be some sort of intimidation by media, then that has to be, there's got to be some sort of protections there.
Yeah. No, look, you've got a good point. Now, but I think what all this demonstrates to me is, I don't necessarily think the focus in our discussion should be on the mechanism, the how the journalist contacts the providers and ends up destroying the person's business, but rather, what is the reason that this industry of dating coaching or pickup artist or whatever you want to call it, why this is so triggering, if you want to use that term, to this class of journalists and these feminist campaigners, why is it that this presents such a juicy and attractive and interesting and target for them, and why are they so angered by it? Because it does seem like this is an excessively large amount of attention being given to something that
some guy trying
doesn't
to get
harm
laid.
anyone, at least. I mean, okay, I don't want to say it doesn't harm anyone. There are a lot of dodgy guys out there, you know, in this industry, but
what do you think?
Doesn't do much harm, I don't think, and it benefits a lot of people.
What do you think? Because I get some of the misogyny type of stuff. I'm probably a little bit more left leaning than most people believe. Actually, one of my regulars is a feminist. I'm actually dating a pretty hardcore feminist.
Yep. Whatever that means, can mean anything these days.
Yeah, it can mean a whole bunch of things, but yeah, she's always watching videos and reading books and things on it. But you know, there some of them do cross the line. I don't think Tom Torero went anywhere near the line.
Yep. No. Look, I before we. I mean, it goes to the reason why many of the irrational identity politics, exists. It's inseparable from what the middle class left obsession with identity politics and racism and sexism. It's part of that package. I guess. Here's the thing, right? It's interesting how the smear comes in very sort of quite early on in the article of this guy who's, helping guys learn how to interact with women and start conversations in public places. To me, it seems pretty innocuous stuff. And I did note a comment. Of course, I don't know whether the comment is real or not, but I saw a comment in the Newsweek article comments thread allegedly from a woman saying she'd met him. She remembered being approached by him in the street in London, and what a lovely sort of conversation, what a lovely surprise it was, and how it made her day, and that he was such a gentle guy and whatever.
What an awful thing! Like that. That's really actually quite sad because I did criticize a lot of the London Daygame model guys, and that is their thing. It's go over with a British accent. Hi, you look pretty today. Like the amount of hatred directed at these guys could not be more unwarranted. Especially when you've got a company like, just off the top of my head, one of the most recent ones I've been looking at is Ultimate Man Project. The banner on their YouTube channel is a guy holding a girl by the neck and then and then putting the and going shh, and it's like, what, you went after Tom Torero? Come on.
So are you saying, Dave, sorry, are you saying that maybe they could legitimately go after the people that do that for their business?
Well, I'm just saying there's a threshold, right? And Tom Torero didn't breach that threshold even. Imagine if he did. That would be part of this article.
So I guess that's very interesting that you say that. So it's good. So it shows that you have your standards, and that's good. But what I'm saying is they smear early on in the article him with, or they bundle him in with, manosphere, misogynistic manosphere, and incel, which I find hilarious because.
Where's this? Where's this? I wish you could actually have access to it. Whereabouts was that?
Which paragraph? Well, I have it up on my laptop as well, so I can probably direct you to it.
Or maybe just tell us what you thought about it. But we're all aware of this.
Yeah. So I mean, the manosphere quote was quite funny. Here we go. They formed an underground seduction community. Blah blah blah. Manosphere communities include incels (involuntary celibates), MGTOW, men going their own way, As some more extreme adherents have perpetrated real-life deadly attacks, manosphere groups have faced widespread ire and online deplatforming. Okay.
There it is.
Yeah. So I find it quite funny. Like, I remember there was some bizarre, about 2-3 years ago, some bizarre tweet from some big female tech CEO saying, in a tweet, say, you almost certainly have, I guess she was tweeting to her fellow CEOs in Silicon Valley, you almost certainly have incels as employees. What are you going to do about it? And I was thinking at the time, well, there's only two options, right? You get them laid or you fire them. And I'm sure she didn't mean the first option. But like this idea of like incel, like, it's hilarious. Like, it's a factual category. Like, it's in the phrase. It's involuntary. It's not like a political identity movement. And if there are guys out there who have made it, then they're as deluded as the feminists are. It makes no sense. So, I mean, women have their own incels, very vocal ones. That's what the grievance about fat shaming is all about. Yeah, and if involuntary celibacy is also at the heart of why women complain about being treated differently as they get older and as their looks fade. So we have a double standard, the treatment of male and female incels. In the former case, they're treated as dangerous and in need of punishment.
Really?
And in the latter case, it's just a legitimate grievance for women, that they can't.
Are incels actually treated as if they're dangerous?
Well,
is that
I mean, that's the implication from this article, is that, yes, they're terrorists, effectively. They're part of the manosphere. And
that's what I see. That's what I brought up early on, is recently there was an actual shooting in Britain. He called himself Professor Waffle. He named himself after wheat waffles. Now, wheat waffles is a black pill guy. The black pill guys, there's a lot of incels in that community. Why didn't DANYA go after them? Because they're a real threat, and there was literally only days or a few weeks prior to that an actual shooting. Yet she decided to go after Mike Squatting Casanova and Tom Torero, who were in fact getting guys out of. So,
well, that's the smear. The smear is that they're part of the package, right? They're all part of this same online sort of, which makes no sense, right?
Well, they're not. But the thing is here is that if I was to, look at it from that point of view, I would argue that she's looking to cause more damage to society, because she would be, if she's out to protect society, she would be going after wheat waffles and actual terrorists. She wouldn't be going after some of these British coaches.
I actually would like to point out that some of the things that at least is described in the article as things that are bad but not illegal, like recording private sexual encounters or recording the audio, of private sexual encounters. Probably in New South Wales that would be illegal.
In Australia, I can't. That's why I gotta be very careful. I can't go running around putting out in fields. It's actually illegal here.
Yep.
It's the Surveillance and Devices Act.
Surveillance Devices Act, yes, but there's also in New South Wales there's a provision in the Crimes Act that basically says where a person has a reasonable expectation of privacy, like going to the toilet or having sex or being in a state of undress, that you can't record. That is a crime. Yeah.
A lot of people don't actually believe me when I talk about that, but it's actually very serious here.
Yeah, that's really different from recording in a street, like approaching a girl in the street. You can do that. You don't need anyone's permission to have your friend film you approaching a girl in the street. That's a different matter.
Are you serious about that? Because my interpretation of it was that you couldn't do it at all.
No, that's not correct.
Really?
I mean, if you wanted to be careful, you'd be getting a release form, just like professional documentary makers do when they interview someone, because that person is a performer in copyright law. They should be entitled to the performer's rights, and so it's good to get a release form if you're on good terms with the person. But if it's an anonymous encounter, and it wouldn't be practical to obtain such a copyright release form.
None of those strict laws are in Britain. So,
well, the one about the recording, where you have a reasonable expectation of privacy, that just seems like, I'm not an expert on the law in Britain, but it does seem from the article that they don't have that, like we do in New South Wales. Yeah.
And
so,
I don't know it, and I don't know of him. I've never heard it, but I guess it says there that he was selling those recordings, but she didn't prove that they existed.
Well, I mean, I presume they exist. I mean, from the bits and pieces I've seen, she wouldn't have had to have made that up. I mean, there were bits and pieces of video that I think they're still out there that you can see.
What if they didn't exist and she made it up, or
well, if she made it up, that's obviously a huge big deal, because journalists are not supposed to do that. I'm assuming that
things have changed recently. Journalists have become.
I don't think she'd need to make it up for her hit piece. You know what I mean? Like, okay. She could have done it without. She could have done this without inventing. But yeah, I think. I just think from a civil liberties standpoint, and with the last 2 years of the way governments have cancelled civil liberties, if you want to put it that way, my concern is that just what we would have thought of as a basic ability to conduct a spontaneous conversation in a public place is being deemed as somehow creepy or evil or disgusting, or how are people supposed to interact and form relationships and meet? Are we supposed to do it through a government application form, or are apps now the only way? I just don't understand and it's also very sexist, isn't it? Because don't you think it's sexist for the article to be implying that these women are just so inanimate and without agency that they're incapable of resisting, or they're sort of they can be convinced to have sex with someone they don't like somehow. There's no way they can walk away from a conversation, or
It might be more like when you go to a country like a third world country and you walk down the street and they're like, taxi, you want to buy this thing, you want to buy that. It's almost like outlawing people selling things on the street. And in Sydney, you walk down the street and on the corners there'll be those charity workers that come up to you, and they actually stand in front of you. They impede your path.
That's right. Yeah.
It's literally, you're just selling love. So you're kind of just selling something else. You're not even really selling anything. You're selling a date that you will be paying for.
That's right, isn't it? Yeah.
And so, but there's a lot of similarities there. But I like to play devil's advocate when I look at this. And so if I was running the country from an economic standpoint, we can't really have all these guys out there, and this, I've got a channel that this is a dating coach sort of a channel where I teach guys how to meet women. En masse, if every man went out there to maximize his results, it would do a lot of damage to society. So preventing it from becoming mainstream is in the government's best interest. I've been saying that all along, because okay, here's a scenario. Okay, I'll sell it to you.
Okay.
Just say you got a 45-year-old man. He's been married for 10, 15 years. He's pumped out a few kids. They're now 18. He started early. He worked hard the entire time. He became independently wealthy, multi-millionaire. His wife is now almost 40. She's like 5 years younger when they got married. They just say they were Catholics or Muslim or some religion where they get married early, right? She's starting to depreciate, right?
Yeah.
He's now worth millions of dollars, and he's willing to take the 50% cut of divorce and go out there and start chasing 18-year-olds again.
Yep.
Imagine if every wealthy man in Western society did that. Imagine what that would do. It would cause there would be a lot more pressure on the 18-year-old girls, the 21-year-old beautiful girls, and there'll be a lot of divorced women in their 30s and 40s. Even if he wasn't independently wealthy, what if he kept in shape and he read the book The Game? He's like, I'm going to try the mystery method, and he picks up a girl 21 while being in his 40s, and he's married to a girl and he decides to divorce her. So when I look at it from that point of view, that's the real. It's a fear. This is why they're so violent. These feminists, from my point of view, that is.
Yeah.
They're so violent because it triggers that fear that in their 40s they're going to be single and alone, and whatever man they're with is going to leave them. Does that kind of make sense?
I suppose so. If you're adopting the sort of evolutionary biology perspective, I guess I.
That's why they simultaneously push for equal pay and all these other things, because the fear of running out of money and being a little bit older and losing their looks, it all kicks in, and it makes perfect sense when you look at it makes sense to me anyway. And
the age gap relationship, the age gap thing, and that issue you're touching on is a pretty big topic and probably worth a separate discussion. I mean, I'm interested in it for all sorts of reasons, but I'm interested in clearly that's a big bee in their bonnet. Like you can see in all the articles, including this one, they focus a lot on the 17-year-old in Poland, for example, in this article. What's your opinion on that? Like, is he okay? Is he crossing any lines to be chasing the 17-year-old in Poland and saying that high school students can be adventurous and basically encouraging his followers to consider doing the same, aiming for very young? What's your take on that?
So she's not an adult in Poland, right?
I guess not.
You'd have to be 18, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I mentioned 18. It's kind of as low as you can. It's an adult. Someone's an adult at 18.
I mean, but you can answer this question in a legal way, but you can also answer it like you indicated before. You have certain reservations about certain things that other people in your industry are doing. I'm just wondering whether you have a view on not on whether something's against the law or not. I think that's something that we can answer, but whether it's acceptable, whether it's unethical.
Whether it's unethical. I guess people are always breaking ethical boundaries in almost everywhere.
But is it like, I guess what I'm wondering is like, is doing flirtatious conversation in the street and all those tactics that he's teaching, is it different when he's doing it when he's doing it in front of or with a 17-year-old than if he's doing it with a 20-year-old? I don't know.
I would say it would be definitely frowned upon, I guess, by most of society. I guess that's probably why he calls it his secret society. But for him to talk about that publicly, it's pretty stupid, I would say.
Is it something? I'm just curious. Was it something that you? Because I've, it's
so
something.
For instance, like recently, I was watching a Bill Burr comedy sort of thing, and I think he was talking about something along these lines, and he was just saying like, I wouldn't go there, but he was kind of hinting that. I think it was David Buss as well that was kind of hinting that men are attracted to younger girls just in general. But I would say, look, if you were to, you probably should marry her. You probably shouldn't be a one night sort of a thing, and you get yourself in. You could someone that's not an adult just raises so many issues for you. I'm more safety first more than anything.
Issues in terms of is it
Everything,
really
everything. It's not just a moral thing. It's more like daddy might go after you. There's so like even did he say that he was approaching girls in like school uniform or something?
No, I don't think it was school uniform. I don't think there was any mention of school uniform in the article. It was just that he was saying how great it was that, look at what you can achieve. I'm in my 30s, you can do the same, that kind of thing. That often girls at this age, they're adventurous and they can be better than older, that kind of thing.
Well, it's something that I don't think anyone or many people would agree that that's okay. And if he was to do that, he's opening up a whole can of worms. I can see why the feminists jumped on it too.
Yeah, well, it was the sort of the first example the article used was that.
But yeah, legally that one's not. What I latched on when I read that, it was the selling sex tapes without any evidence of them being sex tapes and deplatforming everything about him. There's pranksters out there that make jokes like that. Have you heard of Shane Dawson?
No.
Millions of followers. He's just come back, by the way. He's still got his YouTube channel. He's got his website. He never got deplatformed. He got criticized for making talking about underage girls, not 17-year-old girls, actually watching TikToks of girls that were 15, 14, I think 11, and saying about how sexy they are.
This Australian?
No, he's American.
Right.
He's American. So pickup, on the other hand, or dating coaches are being treated, in Tom Torero's case here, far worse than someone like Shane Dawson, who crossed the line. I'm surprised you don't know. This guy's got, I don't know, probably 10 million subscribers or something. One of the biggest on the platform.
I'm old and I'm not very online. That's why I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. But actually, I didn't plan this too well. My device that I'm using to have this conversation with you is about to have no battery power left. So I guess I'm going to have to wind it up. But I think we raised a few issues that, we should definitely come back to. Yeah.
Okay, well, let me just quickly, before you run out of battery. So this is the article. I'll just quickly go through it.
Yeah.
What happened to Tom? He says here, so this is Girls Chase. They say, where was it? There was a guy by the name of Daygame. I can't find it at the moment. There it is here. She went after this guy, Daygame, in the same fashion. He went to jail. He didn't commit suicide. He went to jail for a year and he was acquitted.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, I read that. Yep.
So he was acquitted in 2020. So he committed no crimes. Well, apparently
he went to jail, as in he was in remand, I guess, awaiting trial, and then he was released after. Yeah.
So he probably couldn't afford the case or whatever, and that was part of his punishment for nothing. And here, in the Girls Chase article, the media hung him long before his acquittal. He's out of jail now. Innocent man, went to jail for a whole year. Where's the repercussions for this? So how many people need to go to jail innocent people and how many people need to commit suicide before something's done.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe there's a bigger. Maybe we're going to chat about this in the future. I do think that the middle class left, including campaigning journalists, woke journalists, and feminist journalists, essentially, if you sort of analyze it in economic terms, they're going after anything that helps low status men. That's my view.
Helps. Oh, okay, yeah.
And yeah, essentially, it's a bit of class warfare. That's because there's, and then people too talk about this with woke sort of codes and rules of how you're supposed to speak that university people who haven't been to university don't know, and don't use the right terms, and it's the same thing, isn't it? It's
Okay, so I get what you mean. It's the 80-20 principle. Only the top 20% of men, from women's point of view, are allowed to get laid and reproduce.
well, it's
You
also
think that's what's going on?
Yeah. Well, the middle class left is essentially setting up rules of behaviour and codes of conduct and speech rules that are designed to basically marginalise the people that don't learn them. And
you'd think that the law would still protect people like this. You would think someone that went to jail for a year and was acquitted would be able to sue them for a juicy civil suit.
Yeah, well, it all depends, doesn't it, on what, like everything with the law, it depends on the devil's in the detail. It depends on the specifics of the case. Was he defamed and all that? I mean, what are the grounds? It's complicated. Obviously.
He would need the money too to get.
Yeah, he would need money to pursue it.
That's probably how they target these people too.
I feel like I've gone in so many directions. We could do a whole series, but
well, this is another part of it. So, 10-year study shows elevated suicide risk from teen girls. Really, teen girls that commit suicide. Who are they getting bullied by? They're getting bullied by other girls. There's not guys there bullying them. Oh, I lost him. He ran out of battery. Oh well, I'll have to end it there. I think we waffled on for a little bit too much. But anyway, hopefully that's been of use to you guys. I'm going to end the chat there. If anyone wants to say anything, you've got 10 seconds before I end it. All right.